So thank you for joining. My name is Lai Olson. I lead our research and data programs at Measurement Lab. I'm joined here by my colleagues, Stephen and Nathan. Nathan is a platform engineer and leads our infrastructure contributions, and Stephen leads our engineering team. MLab is a fiscally sponsored project of Code for Science and Society. Nathan and I work on MLab via Code for Science, and Stephen is part of the team at Google that contributes to the project by writing open source code. So before we get started, go ahead and introduce yourselves if you haven't already. And a couple housekeeping notes, please review our community guidelines, which essentially are to communicate with courtesy and respect, approaching these complex topics with patience and an open mind, and treating one another as we would in, quote, real life, even though we are virtual at the moment. Additionally, our call will be recorded and published online, so please just be aware of that when using the chat and speaking. And if you have any concerns, feel free to reach out to me directly. Our goal today is to introduce our new options for contributing to the MLab platform. So I'll start by speaking about our motivations for these new efforts. We'll do an overview of each one in more detail, pause for questions, and then talk about what to do if you are interested in contributing. So I'll just start with a bit about why we're interested in adding the options that we are talking through today. As you might be familiar, MLab was founded in 2008 with the goal of researching the internet openly. The internet, of course, has evolved since then and is evolving all of the time. And as it does, MLab is committed to producing data and tools that help us understand and study that evolution, and our platform is a fundamental part of how we accomplish this. So with these new options to contribute to the platform, we are motivated by the intention to measure from representative vantage points that have an application to user-relevant research. In 2022, we announced our effort, MLab to the Cloud, which is our initiative to measure cloud networks. And as of today, as shown by this graph, 35% of our traffic is now directed towards virtual servers. And the efforts that we'll discuss today are essentially a continuation of the goals that we stated then when we announced to the cloud. By providing more flexibility for contributors and more options for organizations to contribute, our goal is to expand and diversify our vantage points and basically widen the footprint from both a geographic and network perspective. And so on that note, one notable detail is that historically MLab has placed servers exclusively in interconnection points. Starting with the To the Cloud effort and continuing with what we'll introduce today, we are also now soliciting server placements in access, edge, and cloud networks, in addition to interconnection points. So in other words, we are measuring both on-net and off-net. Here's a diagram of the options that we're talking through today that are becoming available to contribute to MLab's infrastructure. Essentially, you can contribute infrastructure that is that you can manage yourself or can be managed by MLab. Self-managed infrastructure can be virtual or physical, meaning it can be a VM or bare metal server. MLab managed infrastructure can also be virtual and physical, and within those options, they have their own set of options that we'll talk about today. They have their own sort of specifications and reasons why they might be all of these have their own reasons why they might be best for your organization. So we'll go over all of those in more detail. So cloud deployments. This is the donation of cloud resources that are then managed by MLab. For some organizations, particularly those who do not run their own networks, sponsoring cloud deployments will probably be the most straightforward way to contribute to the platform. You could also allocate resources from cloud providers that you're already receiving to MLab. So for example, if you're a school or an NGO or a nonprofit with an existing cloud relationship, you could allocate enough resources for a single server or more to MLab. Or if you are a cloud provider yourself, you can contribute by allocating cloud credits within your own networks to MLab as well. So there's different options depending on what kind of organization you are and your interest. The range that we've estimated for one server is anywhere between 30,000 and 360,000 USD, but that's really dependent upon user demand, service availability, and the cloud provider rates. So for example, if you already have a discount with a provider or you are the provider, the cost, of course, will be lower and varies upon all of those variables. Overall, you should note that our services are highly configurable, so we can work within any budget. In terms of which cloud provider, we are agnostic, though depending on your circumstances or interests, you might be interested in a particular one. I will note that since we already have an active presence in GCP, we are highly interested in presence in other cloud networks. Lastly, these options are available today. So if you are looking to support measurement in a specific cloud network or region where you know a cloud network has presence in the near term, this option could potentially be the best fit for you. And I should also mention that self-managed servers, which Stephen will talk about later, can also be virtual, and everything we discussed here is specific to MLab managed servers. So with that, I will pass it on to Nathan to talk through our full-scale deployments.
Hello, as you mentioned, my name is Nathan. I'm an MLab platform engineer, and I will talk briefly about the physical deployment options we have that are managed by MLab. And I'll start by talking briefly about what it currently looks like to host an MLab physical measurement site. And it's been this way since basically MLab's inception, and the first server went online, I think, in 2009. And what it looks like is a switch with 4 servers attached to it, a /26 IPv4 prefix, and where available, a /64 IPv6 prefix with a 10 gigabit per second uplink. As you can imagine, as you can see, those requirements are a little bit steep for probably smaller and medium-sized network providers, especially in a world where IPv4 is essentially exhausted. The reason why someone might want to host this even today, and this is our current offer and only offering, is that it offers a highly redundant setup. And so this is good in a metro area where you expect a high volume of tests. And MLab does maintenance on the servers from time to time that require reboots or servers go down. And so this configuration is very redundant. So we can do that maintenance without the measurement site actually going offline for some period of time. And this is still an option today. And we are now we'll be introducing a more minimal version of this. Next slide, Lighty. And so in the near future, what we're going to be offering is an option to host an MLab managed physical site that is comprised of one physical server, a /28 or /29 IPv4 prefix, and the same other requirements for IPv6 and the uplink. And in this case, the rack space and the power and the physical amount of hardware is significantly lower. The IPv4 requirements are a quarter to an eighth of what they are for the full deployment site. And we expect this to make it a little bit easier for smaller to mid-sized network providers, especially in smaller markets or areas that expect less demand and test volume to deploy something. And this might end up in a more diverse set of network environments where currently we are mostly in interconnection points. This could be in smaller last mile or access networks. And the motivation here is to expand the physical platform beyond where it is. And as I said, these are all of the hardware here is managed by MLab and their physical deployments. And I will pass it on now to my colleague Stephen to talk about an additional option that is not managed by MLab.
Thank you, Nathan. I'm Stephen. Hello. I'm helping develop the software systems that are supporting self-managed deployments. Self-managed deployment is just a single server that will be running MLab software, software published by MLab.
I'll get all those dishes out of there.
Sorry, there's some background noise from someone.
Swap them for of those, the ones that are now.
Thank you, Lai. Self-managed deployment is just a single server running software published by MLab and fully managed by the host organization. So the examples that Lai and Nathan have described are fully managed by MLab. A self-managed deployment would not be. So why would we do this? The internet is everywhere, and by making it as easy as possible to contribute, it allows MLab's platform to continue to expand. It allows us vantage points in different parts of the network than we've had in the past. And by taking MLab out of the management loop, it allows us to include different types of hardware to allow MLab to scale support for these different types, because the host organization is the one dealing with the idiosyncrasies of different kinds of hardware. So how would this work? MLab will publish basically a software distribution. Interested organizations will register with MLab, sign a data sharing agreement so that the data collected on these nodes can continue to be collected, archived, and published in MLab's public data set. And then the host would manage their server using credentials that came from the registration process. So what would you need to do this? A physical or virtual server, something that you have available today, one IPv4 and IPv6 address, a network connection that is at least a gigabit. For busier locations or locations where you're expecting more demand, higher is often better, and a minimal requirements of 4 gigs of RAM and probably a 4-core Intel class CPU. Again, in environments where you get higher demand, more is generally better. We're working with RNP in Brazil today on a pilot that we expect to launch next quarter and be complete in Q3 of 2024, with a goal of being generally available by the end of the year for other organizations.
Stephen, was there more, or did I? Okay, great. So just to review, these are the options. You can self-manage a server, which can be virtual or physical, as Stephen talked about. And then there's a lot of different options for MLab managing a server, whether virtual or physical. Within the physical, there's the option for a full site or a minimal site configuration. Within virtual, there's the option to, if you are a cloud provider, allocate cloud credits, or if you have a relationship with the cloud provider, allocate credits that you are already receiving to MLab. There's also the pathway where you just sponsor cloud credits as well, or cloud resources. So here we'll pause for questions. What can we answer? I will take that as a signal that we explained everything perfectly. But if you need if anything comes to mind, then please feel free to reach out. We have an infrastructure contribution form that is on our website. I sent the link in the chat earlier. The full specs, if you cannot remember all of the different details, perfectly understandable, and they're all listed on our site. And we'll update. We mentioned a couple of timelines. That's also where we'll update as we proceed through the different trials that we mentioned. And then, acknowledging that these options might be interesting to some of you, not as maybe something that you directly donate, but maybe you work with partners, maybe you work with ISPs or different providers that you want to make these resources available to. You can share the specifications that are listed on our website, these slides, and then after this call, I will post the recording on YouTube and then put the link in these slides and on our website as well. So there's many ways to share the information, and always feel free to reach out to hello@measurementlab.net. I should have said at the top that we expected this to be a shorter call, but mostly we are just excited about pursuing these options and look forward to hearing your interest. I do see one question from Maria. Is there any indication of rough estimate of the volume of measurements the self-managed deployment with the specs mentioned would sustain or enable? Stephen, Nathan, thoughts?
So in part, it's a function of how much or the local capabilities of clients in the area. For example, in some parts of the US and Europe, it's common to have a gigabit connection or even higher. Obviously, if a self-managed server was only provisioned with a gigabit, it would only be able to handle with high fidelity, one measurement at a time. In other regions of the world, it's common to have much slower access technology. In which case, you could have a few dozen connections and still be measuring well. So does this answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay.
Anyone else before we sign off? Great. Well, in summary, we're just looking to measure more of the internet in different ways. Oh, okay, great. Would you be able to summarize the presentation to Measurement Summit in DC to wider audiences of state broadband offices, providers, and consumer networks? Yes, we are able to do that. We'd be happy to. Leighton, if you want to, I'll follow up with you directly and we can think about different opportunities that would be best. I will, I guess, mention that I did recently meet with folks at the FCC about these options and just are trying to spread the word that we're looking to expand and diversify. Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining. As I mentioned, this will be posted, so if you missed anything, you can watch the recording, but also feel free to reach out. Thank you for joining.